On my graduation day, I didn't cross the stage. I collapsed before I even reached the first step. One moment, the crowd was cheering. The next, the world twisted sideways, and I hit the ground with my cap rolling away like it was trying to escape the scene before I could. When I opened my eyes, harsh hospital lights burned above me. My gown was still on. My hands were trembling, and the doctor's voice cut through everything like a cold blade. "We called your parents, Victoria," but no one answered. No one came. While I lay there barely conscious, hooked to machines, my parents were out smiling in sunny photos, acting as if their daughter didn't just collapse in front of hundreds of people. Days later, still weak, my phone exploded with calls, 73 missed calls, all begging for the same thing. "Victoria, we need your help." But this time, I finally said no. I grew up in a house where love had rules unspoken, uneven, and always tilted away from me. From the outside, we looked like the kind of family people envied. White fence, clean yard, smiling Christmas cards. But inside, I learned early that my worth came second, sometimes third, and often, not at all. My mother, Grace Hale, adored my younger brother Brandon like he was made of glass. "He's sensitive," she always said, smoothing his hair. "He needs extra care." And my father, Thomas, had a role prepared for me long before I understood it. "Victoria's the strong one," he'd announce proudly. But it never felt like praise, more like a sentence. Strong meant, help your brother. Strong meant, don't complain. Strong meant, swallow everything and smile anyway. I remember being 8 years old when Brandon shattered Mom's favorite vase. He cried loud, dramatic, instant tears. I tried to explain, but Dad cut me off with a sigh. "Victoria, just take responsibility. Your brother can't handle stress like you can." That night, I swept broken glass alone while Brandon got extra dessert. Birthdays were the same story. His came with decorations, themed cakes, 20 screaming kids, and a rented bounce house. Mine? A small cake on a paper plate and a tired, "We'll celebrate properly next year, sweetheart." Next year never came. The worst memory, though, was the winter I caught a fever so high I couldn't lift my head. I lay on the couch shivering while my parents rushed around getting Brandon ready for his school talent show. "Be strong, Victoria," Mom said, slipping his costume into its garment bag. "We can't disappoint your brother." They left me alone in a dim living room, heater clicking in the background, shadows stretching across the walls. I stared at the front door, foolishly waiting for it to open again. It didn't. Maybe that was the night I first learned what collapsing felt like, only it didn't happen to my body back then. It happened somewhere quieter, deeper. By the time I left for college, I carried that lesson like extra weight in my luggage. If someone needed saving, it would always be me. If someone needed to be sacrificed, it would also always be me. I didn't know it then, but my childhood wasn't just shaping me. It was preparing me for the day I collapsed on stage. The day my parents finally proved exactly how little they ever intended to show up for me. Leaving home for college felt like stepping into air I could finally breathe. Ohio wasn't glamorous, and my dorm was tiny, but it was mine. No Brandon slamming doors, no mother assigning me emotional chores, no father reminding me I was the strong one. For the first time, I woke up in a world that didn't ask anything from me, or so I thought. I worked 2 jobs to cover my tuition and rent morning shifts at the campus cafe, night shifts at the hospital, as a patient care assistant. It was exhausting, but it was my exhaustion, not something inherited or assigned. And in Ohio, people actually saw me. There was Nina Carter, my loud, sarcastic coworker who shoved sandwiches into my hands when I skipped meals. "Eat, Vic. You're human, not a rechargeable battery." And Elliot Brooks, the guy in my anatomy class who carried 2 extra pens because, as he claimed, Victoria's always losing hers. They weren't my family, but for the first time I understood how support was supposed to feel. Offered, not demanded. But my past had a long reach. The first time my mom called asking for money, I was sorting lab supplies. She didn't even say hello. "Victoria, the electric bill is late. Your father's hours got cut. Can you cover it?" I hesitated. 2 seconds. Long enough for her voice to sharpen. "Don't start, Victoria. Your brother is stressed enough. We're counting on you." My stomach twisted. The leash had found me even 3 states away. I transferred the money. The next week it was Brandon's car repair. Then a credit card payment. Then rent money because Brandon's roommate bailed. And two, every time I sent what I could, sometimes what I couldn't. Nina noticed before I did. "You're pale again," she said, handing me a protein bar. "You need to slow down." But slowing down meant bills. And bills meant calls from home. And calls from home meant guilt I had been trained to obey. One evening, during a cafeteria study session, my phone vibrated. A message from Mom. "Your brother needs $300 by tonight. He's anxious. Be a good sister." I stared at it for a full minute before locking my phone and sliding it face down on the table. Elliot watched me quietly. "Let me guess. Your family again?" I didn't answer, because I knew even as I sat in a new state, with new people, building a new life, the same old truth followed me like a shadow. I could leave home, but home never really left me. And somewhere inside me, beneath the long shifts and fake smiles, the cracks were starting. I just didn't know how deep they would go, or how close I already was to collapsing. Stress doesn't arrive like a storm. It creeps quiet, patient, invisible until one day you wake up and realize the ground beneath you has already split. For me, the cracks started small. The first time it happened, I was charting vitals at the hospital. My handwriting actually shook like someone had nudged my elbow. I blinked, tried again, but the pen trembled in my fingers. "Victoria?" Elliot's voice drifted behind me. "You okay?" I forced a smile. "Just tired." But the truth was uglier. When I stood up, the room tilted. White walls bent like heat waves. My pulse hammered in my ears. And I grabbed the counter pretending I dropped something. It passed. But instead of resting, I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Mom. 2 texts from Brandon. "Need $250 by today. Please hurry. Vic, don't make this harder. I'm stressing out." I transferred the money. The cracks widened. Some nights at the hospital, I felt the kind of exhaustion that made my bones ache. I'd close my eyes for 1 second and jerk awake thinking I had passed out. But every time I reached for my phone to ask for help, the first messages I saw were always demands. Never. "How are you?" Never. "Are you okay?" Always. "We need." One evening, during a late shift, Nina slammed a cup of soup in front of me. "You didn't eat again." "Vic, you're turning gray." "I'm fine," I said automatically. "No, you're not." She crossed her arms. "You're running on fumes. This isn't normal." But I had grown up in a world where exhaustion was normal, where my comfort was optional, and where the word no didn't belong to me. So I ignored her. Until the night everything snapped. It was almost midnight. I had just left the hospital, my scrubs sticking to my skin, my head pounding. My phone buzzed with a notification. I expected another request for money. Instead, it was a photo. Brandon. My parents. A backyard BBQ. Sunset lighting. Plates stacked with ribs and burgers. All 3 smiling like a magazine ad. And the caption, "Finally, a family day without Victoria's drama." I stopped walking. I don't know how long I stood there on the sidewalk. My breath caught somewhere in my throat. A cold wind brushed my face. But the real sting came from something deeper. A familiar ache. Like the one I felt as a sick child waiting on a dark sofa for a door that never opened. I locked my phone. My hands were shaking so violently I almost dropped it. Nina wasn't there. Elliot wasn't there. No doctor could diagnose what that moment did to me. Because it wasn't burnout. It wasn't stress. It was the sound of a floorboard snapping inside my chest, a warning the collapse was coming. I just didn't know it would happen, in front of the entire world. Graduation morning looked perfect, bright sky, fluttering banners, crowds buzzing with excitement. A day meant for celebration, but inside I felt hollow. My hands trembled as I put on my cap. The mirror reflected a girl who looked like me, but faded, sunken eyes, pale lips, a stiffness in her posture that whispered, "Don't fall apart." I told myself it was nerves. It had to be. The campus lawn overflowed with families holding balloons and flowers. Mothers crying, fathers filming, siblings cheering. I scanned the crowd. Nothing. No Grace. No Thomas. No Brandon. I checked my phone. "Mom, traffic is terrible. We'll get there soon." "Dad, go ahead first. We'll catch up." I swallowed the ache rising in my throat. They promised. Just believe them. My row stood. Applause roared through the stadium. Students walked in single file toward the stage. I followed, each step heavier than the last. When the announcer called the name before mine, a sharp pain bloomed in my chest. My pulse sped up. The edges of my vision darkened. I inhaled sharply. Not now. Please, not now. Next, Victoria Hale. I stepped forward. The world didn't. The stage lights blurred into glowing halos. The ground tilted left, then right, as if the earth itself didn't want to hold me up anymore. I blinked hard once, twice, but the dizziness crashed over me like a wave. A ringing filled my ears. The sky dimmed. Faces melted into a swirl of colors. I felt my knees buckle. No, no, no. The whisper slipped out before I could stop it. Then everything dropped. A scream. Hands grabbing me. Voices overlapping. Call 911. She's unconscious. Move back. My body hit the grass, cold and unforgiving. I heard someone crying. I realized it was me. When I woke, antiseptic filled my nose. Beeping monitors surrounded me like a heartbeat I no longer trusted. A warm blanket covered my legs, but I still felt frozen. A doctor leaned over me. Victoria? Can you hear me? I nodded weakly. You collapsed from severe exhaustion, dehydration, elevated heart rate. Your body has been under extreme stress for a long time. His tone softened. You're lucky you didn't collapse alone. My throat tightened. I forced out the question even though I knew the answer would hurt. Did my parents come? The doctor hesitated long enough to tell me everything. We called them several times. A pause. No one arrived. Something inside me cracked, not loudly, but with a devastating quiet. The kind of break you don't notice until breathing hurts. Hours later, when the room dimmed and I could finally turn my head without feeling faint, I reached for my phone. One new message. Brandon had posted a photo. My parents smiling, laughing, plates piled with food. A sunny lakeside behind them. Caption. Great day with the family. No drama for once. They weren't stuck in traffic. They weren't rushing to me. They weren't thinking about me at all. They were celebrating. While I lay unconscious in a hospital gown, I stared at the photo until my tears blurred the screen. Not from sadness, but from clarity. My collapse didn't break me. Their absence did. And I didn't know it yet. But the real collapse, the one that would tear my life open, hadn't even begun. The hospital discharged me 2 days later. I walked out with shaky legs, a bag of medications, and a heaviness in my chest I couldn't name. The world looked the same, cars passing, people chatting. Spring air warm on my skin, but something inside me had shifted in a way I couldn't undo. When I got to my apartment, I collapsed onto the bed without bothering to take off my shoes. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to do nothing. No work, no studying, no responding, just breathing. But the quiet didn't last. My phone buzzed. Once, twice. Then, non-stop, so violently the device rattled against my nightstand, like it was trying to claw its way into my hands. Annoyed, I finally picked it up. My screen flashed. 75 missed calls. My stomach knotted. Mom, Dad, Brandon, home, all repeated dozens of times. Then came the messages, hundreds of them, loading one after another. Victoria, why aren't you answering? This is serious. Call us back now. You can't ignore us like this. Brandon needs help. You have to pick up. Of course. It was never about me. Not when I collapsed. Not when I was lying in the ER alone. Not when they posted pictures celebrating without me. But now? Now they needed something. I scrolled upward, toward the first message they sent, hoping, foolishly, that maybe one of them had checked on me earlier. Nothing. Not a single call during my hospitalization. My blood ran cold. Then I opened the image Dad sent. It wasn't a photo of them. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't anything human. It was a screenshot from a bank. A loan. A very large loan. In my name. My breath hitched. I looked again, zooming in until the pixels blurred. My signature. Except, it wasn't. It was a scan of my old signature. The one I used years ago on a rental application before college. A signature I hadn't used in forever. One only my parents had a copy of. My hands trembled as the realization sank in. They forged my name. They took out a loan under my identity. They were calling because the bank needed confirmation. My confirmation. And if I didn't give it, the entire loan would fall back on them. They didn't want me. They wanted access. My throat burned with something between heartbreak and fury. Another message popped up. Mom. Victoria, don't be dramatic. Just sign the confirmation. Brandon made a mistake. Fix this for him. Fix it. Fix him. Fix their disaster. Always me. I turned off my phone and stared at the ceiling, tears slipping down my cheeks, not out of sadness, but out of the sudden, terrifying clarity of my entire life. For 26 years, I thought I was their daughter. But in that moment, I understood exactly what I was to them: a resource, a backup plan, a name to use. I didn't pick up the phone. Instead, I texted the only person who had ever shown up for me. Nina, can you come over? I need help. And for the first time in my life, those words didn't feel like failure. They felt like the beginning of something I had never allowed myself to have: freedom. Nina arrived 20 minutes after I texted her. She didn't knock, she just walked in, eyes wide the second she saw my face. Vic, what happened? I didn't speak. I just handed her my phone. She scrolled through the messages in silence, her expression shifting from confusion to anger to something dangerously close to outrage. Victoria, she whispered. This is fraud. The word hit me like a slap. Fraud. Something illegal. Something real. Something I wasn't imagining or exaggerating. But they're my family, I said weakly. Exactly, Nina snapped. And they still did this. She sat beside me on the bed, her voice steady but fierce. We're not letting them bury you under this. Not again. She helped me open my laptop and call a financial attorney she knew through her cousin. My hands shook the whole time. I had to hold the phone with both hands just so it wouldn't fall. When the attorney appeared on video, he didn't even blink when I showed him the loan documents. This signature is scanned, he said. Clear, professional, certain. They had no legal authorization. You are not responsible. They impersonated you. This is identity fraud. Identity fraud. The room tilted for a moment, but this time it wasn't from exhaustion. It was realization. Everything I had ignored. Everything I had excused. Everything I had forgiven. It all came crashing into a single truth. They didn't love me. They used me. The attorney walked me through every step: how to document everything, protect my accounts, notify the bank, and what to do if my parents tried contacting me again. Tell them, he said firmly, that you are aware of the forgery and will pursue legal action if they continue. My heart hammered in my ribs. Legal action. Against my own parents. The very thought twisted something inside me. Nina squeezed my shoulder. You're protecting yourself, Victoria. That's not a crime. The next morning, my phone rang again. Same number. Same ringtone I had learned to fear. Nina nodded at me. Answer it. But on speaker. I pressed accept. Mom's voice exploded through the line. Victoria! Finally! Where have you been? We've been worried sick. Worried. Right. I kept my voice calm. I was in the hospital. Silence. A painful, telling silence. Then a throat cleared. Well, yes. But Victoria, listen, Brandon is in trouble. The bank won't speak to us without you. You need to fix this. Fix. Always fix. Dad's voice came next, deep and commanding. Victoria, be reasonable. Call the bank. Confirm the loan. I felt my pulse rising, but not from fear this time. Dad, I said slowly. You used my signature. A beat. Then, we only did that because you're responsible, Mom snapped. You know Brandon can't handle things like this. I collapsed, I said quietly. My body literally shut down. Another pause. Mom's voice softened, but it was the kind of softness a knife has before it cuts. Sweetheart, don't make this ugly. Just do the right thing for your family. Family. They loved that word. They wielded it like a weapon. Dad growled into the phone. If you don't help, we could lose everything. For the first time in my life, I didn't flinch. I spoke to an attorney, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. What you did is illegal. You forged my signature. If you contact me again about this loan, I'll take legal action. Mom gasped. You're threatening us? I'm protecting myself. Dad's voice cracked into a roar. You ungrateful child. My hand trembled, but Nina mouthed. Say it, Victoria. I inhaled. I am not your solution. I am not your safety net. I'm not fixing this. Not anymore. Mom's voice broke into frantic sobbing. Victoria, please, your brother's future. No, I whispered. A simple word. A word I had never been allowed to own. No. And I tapped the red button. Call ended. It was quiet. so quiet I could hear my heartbeat. Nina let out a long exhale. You did it. I covered my face with my hands, not from shame, but from release, pure, terrifying, beautiful release. For the first time in my life, I wasn't breaking. I was breaking free. And somewhere deep inside, a new truth began to form. If they wanted a puppet, they should have chosen someone who didn't know how to cut strings. Hitting that red button didn't feel like ending a call. It felt like ending a lifetime of being owned. But freedom, I learned, comes with echoes. The moment the call disconnected, my hands trembled not from fear, but from the shock of hearing my own voice stand up for me. Nina wrapped an arm around my back, grounding me. Breathe, Vic, she whispered. You didn't destroy anything. You just stopped letting them destroy you. For the first time in days, my lungs actually filled, but I wasn't done, not yet. There were still ties to cut. Ties they had wrapped around me so tightly I didn't even know where I ended and they began. So, while Nina brewed coffee like she was preparing for emotional surgery, I opened my laptop, my bank account, my email, my phone plan, my old insurance. All the shared accounts I didn't realize they still had access to, and I began severing them one by one. First, I changed passwords. Then I removed backup numbers. Then I deauthorized every device with my parents' names attached. Every click was a liberation. Every confirmation box was a breath. Every, "Are you sure?" felt like the system asking if I wanted to save myself. Yes, I was sure. By noon, I had removed myself from everything. Then came the hardest step, calling the bank. I sent them the attorney's report, the forged documents, the timeline, everything. The representative on the line was sympathetic. Miss Hale, we understand. You are not responsible for this loan. We will flag your account for fraud protection. Fraud protection. Protection from my own parents. When I hung up, Nina squeezed my shoulder proudly. That's it. They can't touch you anymore. But she was wrong. They could still try. My phone buzzed again, messages despite the call block. Unknown number. Victoria. Answer. We're desperate. Another. You're ruining this family. Another. You owe us this. After everything we've done for you. Everything they've done? I laughed, a small, humorless sound that hurt on the way out. Nina peeked over. Anonymous numbers? Yeah. She held out her hand. Give it here. I passed my phone. She blocked every message, every number, every loophole. Then she placed the phone back in my palm gently, like handing something fragile to someone learning how to hold it again. You get to choose who has access to you, she said. And today, you chose you. Later that evening, a text from my old neighbor, Mrs. Lowell, came through a number I didn't recognize at first. Your family is in chaos. Brandon is yelling at your father. Your mother is crying. They didn't expect you to walk away. I stared at that message for a long time. Once, I would have run back. Once, I would have apologized. Once, I would have paid, soothed, rescued, fixed. Now, I set my phone down, made myself a cup of tea, opened my window, let the breeze fill my apartment with something I had never truly felt before. Peace. I wasn't their solution anymore. I wasn't their possession. I wasn't their foundation to stand on. I had cut the chains. And somewhere deep inside, for the first time in my life, I felt something blooming, a future that finally belonged to me. Freedom didn't arrive like fireworks. It came quietly, like the first inhale after being underwater too long. The morning after I cut ties with my parents, sunlight spilled across my apartment floor in a way I had never noticed before. It wasn't brighter, but it felt warmer, maybe because, for the first time in my life, I wasn't waking up to someone else's crisis. Just my breath, my space, my choice. I moved slowly that week on purpose. My body still ached from the collapse, and my heart was bruised from the truth I finally faced. But for once, I let myself rest. I let myself heal without apologizing for it. I went to therapy, officially. Not because someone told me to, but because I wanted to understand how someone becomes strong enough to stop being strong for everyone else. My therapist, Dr. Keller, listened as I unraveled years of exhaustion and guilt. When I finished, she asked, "What would it feel like to live a life you didn't have to survive?" The question stunned me. I had never imagined a version of myself who wasn't fighting. I eventually moved into a small studio near the lake. Nothing fancy, but the morning light hit the walls in soft gold streaks, and somehow that made it feel like home in a way my childhood house never did. Elliot helped me carry boxes, pretending they were heavier than they were just to make me laugh. "You know," he said, "I think this might be the first time I've seen you look free." "Do I?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah. You look like someone who finally remembers she has her own life." I didn't say it out loud, but he was right. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for my phone to explode with demands. I wasn't calculating how much money I had left after sending half home. I wasn't rehearsing the apology I'd learned to give before anyone even accused me of anything. I was just existing, and it felt beautiful. News of my family reached me through small channels, neighbors, mutual acquaintances, distant relatives. I never asked, but people told me anyway. The loan fell through. The bank stepped in. Brandon finally had to face consequences he'd avoided for years. Mom apparently cried for days. Dad shouted at everyone. They blamed each other, then blamed the bank, then blamed me. But their chaos didn't belong to me anymore. Their decisions weren't mine to fix. Their problems weren't mine to inherit. Their downfall wasn't mine to mourn. That burden, for the first time, stayed with them where it always should have been. One evening, as spring melted into early summer, I walked along the water, feeling the breeze lift strands of my hair. My heartbeat was steady. My chest felt open. My steps didn't drag. And I realized I wasn't waiting for a crisis. I wasn't bracing for the next demand. I was living a life that was finally, simply mine. My collapse hadn't been the end. It was the beginning, the moment my body forced me to stop long enough to see the truth. You cannot keep saving people who refuse to stand on their own. And you cannot keep calling it love when it is sacrifice without choice. I chose myself. And that choice didn't make me selfish. It made me whole. So, if anyone ever asks what I learned from the day I collapsed on my graduation stage, here's my answer. Sometimes, your body breaks because your heart stayed too strong for too long. Sometimes no is the only thing that can save you. And sometimes the life you're meant to live only begins the moment you walk away.